What is up, guys? Welcome to a new video. Today we're gonna show you the evolution of long shots in football from 1950 to 2021. But first, we need to give a shout out to our sponsor, OneFootball. OneFootball is the #1 football app in the world, which all football fans should have, and it's the perfect app if you want to follow your team even closer with all of the news, live scores, videos and updates. It's an app that every single football fan in the world should be having.
OneFootball is an app I use every day, and it's a great way to get stats, latest news and updates on my favorite team.
So make sure to download OneFootball using the link in the description to support us over at skillNshoot. Free to use on Android and iOS, and let's get into the video. Starting off in the 1950s until 1970s, there wasn't exactly a lot of knuckleballs being scored because the ball looked like this, very uneven and super hard to shoot. So people most of the time use their toes to actually strike the ball. That's what we're gonna be doing. This is probably gonna hurt, but this is how it was back in the day. Players like Pele used this toe punt technique to score long shots from 16 to around 20 meters. Didn't really shoot from further out than that because of the ball being so bad, and obviously you can't get too much power using a toe punt. As you can see, it was very difficult for us to actually hit the target. Obviously back in these times they used the very hard football boots as well. They weren't even really football boots, but as you can see it was very difficult, and I think that's the reason why we don't have too many long shot goals scored back in these days. In the 70s, the football boots and the balls became a lot better, and this allowed players to strike the ball using their laces. This meant that people could score from further out, and the shot overall was more consistent.
No. Pretty Caroline, stone cold stunner. She was a winner, started working at the gun. Surface of her mind.
People just hit the ball with their laces, which led to a basic rising shot.
Leave you there, don't make them scared. Yeah, it's the ugly truth. How they coming for you. Yeah, no.
Not a technique we use that much often nowadays, but still an effective shot if you can master it.
In the late 80s going into the 90s, players started to use the inside of their foot a bit more when a bit closer to the goal. Of course they still shot with their laces a bit further out, but players wanted more consistency, so that's why the curve technique was more common.
Yeah, I get money just to pass the time. Came from nothing, so we stunting just to pass the time.
This technique wasn't actually too difficult to do. We all got really good and consistent shots with it, and we didn't have many problems with technique.
I get money just to pass the time. Came from nothing, so we stunting just to pass the time. Yeah, I'm finessing just to pass the time.
This way of scoring long shots has influenced how people score long shots these days, with people like Robben and Coutinho taking huge inspiration from that technique. In the 90s, we started seeing our first halfway long shots go in. For example, David Beckham's iconic goal in 1996 from the halfway line. And they were able to do these kinds of shots because of the ball being much more consistent and having a more stable flight trajectory.
I'm writing more comments, I just keep on buying more diamonds, hey. Yeah, I get money just to pass the time. Came from nothing, so we stunting just to pass the time. Yeah, I'm finessing just to pass the time. Think she love me, I'm just texting her to pass the time. Yeah, I get money just to pass the time.
Later on in the early 2000s, the player Xabi Alonso also became very famous for his halfway line goals. From the 2000s, the football gear became a lot better, but of course mainly the football pitch itself became a really high quality, so we saw knuckleballs more often, especially from Ronaldo and of course Juninho in the mid-2000s.
I like getting money, I got time to get it. Target on me, so my car's a tinny. Dancing with the devil, I don't bargain with it. Bobbing in the dash and the stick is with it. And I hit the 4-5 on the west side, but I'm from from the east side. This how we slide. This how we ride. Yeah, this how we ride. Going pro, no lead. Make it easy like 1, 2, 3.
The knuckleball technique is pretty difficult to learn, but if you can master it, it can be really effective against keepers, especially at long ranges, even though it's hard to get the right placement.
Numbers up and never falling. Feel like I hit the lottery and proud of me. No one paid proud of me, so I throw pride away. She know I stuck to the plan and I stayed out the way. Now we're spending no money, never touching the bank. Just show me the game and I'ma get it done. Don't do it for fame, do it for the wins.
Since the 2010s, we have seen many more players starting to master the knuckleball technique, especially players like Bale. That's why we're seeing some insane goals these days from long range. The knuckleball technique is very common.
From the 2000s and onwards, it has also become more common for people to score long shots using an outside curling technique, especially when the ball is rolling towards the player, inspired by Roberto Carlos and Michael Essien.
From the mid-2000s, the player Quaresma introduced a new way to score long shots using the outside of his foot. That technique is called the trivela, and Quaresma was one of the first players to score using that technique outside of the 16-meter box, and it has made for some absolutely beautiful goals throughout his career. Throughout the 2010s, we saw a few players who evolved the Maradona shooting technique from the 80s to 90s. Players like this was Coutinho and also Robben, who had this same curve with the inside of their feet from a little bit further out with a bit more power, and Coutinho was also famous for adding a bit more dip to his long shots. Even though these players often shoot from further out, the technique can still be very effective, especially Coutinho's, where he adds a bit more dip to the shot, making it even harder for the keeper to save. That's it for the long shots. Once again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this evolution video. Let's go for 3,000 likes on this one. And of course, massive thanks to OneFootball for sponsoring this video. We'll leave their links down below, so make sure you guys go and download it and also support us. But that is all for now. We'll see you next week with a new video. Peace out.